Way back in late 2023, Powkitty introduced the RGB 30 with this weird screen, this really interesting screen with a 1-to-1 ratio. And everybody thought, who wants a 1-to-1 ratio? None of the old retro consoles are at 1-to-1. I mean, we did have 8-to-7 like the Super Nintendo, but no 1-to-1s. We had 4-to-3 for a majority of the middle generation of consoles, and then 16:9. But guess what? The RGB 30 actually surprised critics, including myself, and brought about a whole revolution of this particular form factor, this 4-inch 720p screen. And today we're going to take a look at the newest device to handle that screen, the Diium D-40MAX. Another handheld with that 4-inch screen at the 1-to-1 ratio with a familiar looking form factor. But is it any good? Well, you're going to have to stay tuned and watch. Remember to hit that like button and subscribe so you never miss an episode of our awesome content. But let's dive in and find out if the Diium D40MAX is worthy of that name, or is this just another e-waste in Dead Fred's collection? I needed to build something quick. I needed a project. My mother-in-law was coming and I just knew that Ace was the place for me. So I went there and I'm like, no way guys, I'm not an Ace customer. I don't know how to build stuff. Anyways, Deadheads, welcome back to the channel. Or welcome to the channel for the first time, new Deadheads. Today, we're gonna take a look at, okay, and as always, we'll start with the box. And we do have the Diium box here. This has a nice white cover, a pretty classy basic design here. We do have a picture of the handheld on the front, the D40MAX using the Max moniker. We have Max, Pro, Ultra. We have all these monikers that don't really match things. Again, this is the all-winner A133P, so it's not really a maximum CPU, but it does show that on there. On the sides, we do have the colorway. We did go with a pink purplish color, and the 64 gig card. Nothing really on the bottom, just those little UFC codes. But let's get this thing open and let's see what's inside. And it does have one of those designs that opens from one side. I like that. And we'll move the handheld out of the way. And inside the box, first thing we do have is a screen protector, and this is nice because we do have a actual, decent screen protector. It's not one of those floppy ones. We do have a quality control, so it's always good to see a quality control pass there. And then we have our manual. This is a pretty extensive manual that's in color. Pretty big manual book here. It has a lot of information. This is running Android, so it does have some information here about it. They do have a special little front end simulator, front end overlay you can go into by holding the menu button down, which is pretty nice here. So a lot of information. Then we have our basic USB-C to A cord here. So no surprises here. Nothing under the tray underneath that. Pretty much our most common things, the things we expect to see. Nothing really to surprise here. But let's get this all packaged back in because, of course, what we want to dive into is the handheld and find out if Diium has provided us or has produced something that is really of a good quality. Okay, so we got it out of the box here. And as expected from the images, it has a nice sort of cube-esque sort of shape to it. And as I show it here next to the RG Cube XX, you can kind of see the form factor and shape is quite similar. This is not surprising since we're using the same 4-inch 720p by 720p screen that we've seen. This has nice feeling to it and weight to it. The plastic feels very similar to previous Diium or SDZer plastics that we've seen before. One thing to mention on the back is these nice grips, and I really like the texture of it. It's almost a little rubbery, but also plastic, but it has a nice feeling to it, and there's good ergonomic curves to the back. Holding this feels pretty good, which is not surprising since we're dealing with a cube-like sort of handheld here. Now let's start testing the hardware, and we have these huge buttons that we've seen from this brand before, and yes, the buttons are nice. If you like really large buttons, then this is going to be very pleasing because it does have very quite large buttons on it. They feel nice. They are independent. They're not pressing down other buttons as I press them, and they're in a good location. Moving on to the D-pad, and again, we have that large D-pad, sort of like we saw on the D28S that we saw from this brand, some of the other ones from Diium that have been in the past. It is a decent D-pad. It's sort of long and skinny, but I like it, and it rotates and does pretty well. Now, we're going back to switch style sticks. They are in the configuration, which really makes less sense. Rather than both be on the bottom, but they're in this split configuration. But they're clicky. They feel pretty good with the rotation. No idea if they're going to have long-term drift or not. I don't see anything to indicate whether these are Hall-based sensors. So probably these are basic switch sticks. They'll do the job. But again, would like to have seen the better sticks that Magic X uses at this price point. So really no excuse for that. Moving on to the shoulders, and we have the first thing I don't like. I do not like these shoulders. First of all, they're not analog, okay? And second of all, if we're going to have a slim form factor with that analog, I'd prefer an inline sort of solution. And then they just don't feel great. They feel, I don't know, they just feel kind of cheap. They don't feel good. Maybe I've been using better ones just lately too much, but these just feel really, really not that great on the shoulder buttons. Moving around on the bottom, we do have our DC OTG port. We have two TF cards. We have one TF card slot on the bottom, and then we have a headphone jack. We don't really have anything on the sides here. Both sides are more for the ergonomics, so that's good because your hands are going to be there covering it up. And going to the top, we have a volume rocker, and we have a power button. So there's also, pretty minimalist as far as buttons go. We do have a start and select on the right bottom side, and then we have a back and home or menu button on the left side. So we have the typical amount of buttons you'd expect to find here. And those buttons are nice and fine. Looking at the back, we have, again, that textured grip that I do like and think is favorable. We have the Diium sticker. And we have a nice plastic vent back here. And it feels nice. This is a nice color. Call it pink. I'd say it's more purplish pink, or I don't know. It's a unique color, but I kind of like it. With the black, it looks pretty good. So overall, the shoulder buttons are kind of the worst thing about this. The sticks are also not that great, but the D-pad buttons are serviceable. And for most things you might be playing on this, you're probably going to use the D-pad and the buttons more than anything anyways, so not terrible. And then we do have this great screen. This screen is effectively the same screen we've seen for the last 2 years since the Powkitty RGB30 introduced it. With that 1-to-1 ratio, it's a nice screen. 720p is great at this size, this 4-inch size, so I really like it. But let's get this thing booted up and find out if the Android implementation is going to be, really bad, somewhat good, maybe great. We'll find out. But let's check in with this and get this thing booted up. Hey guys, sorry to interrupt the video, but I wanted to take a moment to talk about an awesome speaker. This AGM Magrock portable Bluetooth speaker that is IP67 waterproof, drop proof, and dust proof. Using Bluetooth, you can use this speaker just about anywhere. It also has a vibrant RGB light show to give it that nice effect that you look for. Best of all, this thing has a magnetic attachment design. And as you can see here, I use this to make my handheld sound glorious. Oh my God, my RG477M has never sounded better. Yes, that's right. This is small, pocketable, portable, and best of all, it comes in at under $50. You can pick one of these up for yourself by hitting the link in the description below. We want to thank Amazon for sending this over and having us take a look at it. Again, this is the AGM Magrock portable Bluetooth speaker, which could be a very good companion to all of your precious handhelds. Back to the show. All right, booting up, we do have that Diium screen that we're used to seeing here. This is a Android-based handheld, so we're going to boot into a version of Android. I'm waiting to see what it looks like, but the screen does look nice here. Taking a minute here to boot all the way in. We do know, so you see that familiar tablet is starting, so no surprises there. This is a touch screen, and I found the touch screen to be fairly responsive. It's running Android 10, so it's a bit of an older implementation of Android. There's very minimalist. There's not a lot of bloat on here. They do have some things pre-installed, some things maybe more Chinese focused, like Baidu IME. We do see a Panda gameplay thing here, and they have some of the emulators set up, like M64 Plus, Drastic on this, and Flycast. So there are some things set up here. It does have Wi-Fi, so we can hook into Wi-Fi. And again, we're really starting to see some of these handhelds compete with Android touchscreen at the 70 and under dollar range for this. I've been seeing this thing going for around 55 to 60 on AliExpress sales plus shipping and taxes. So I think it's a pretty good recommendation there. One thing about the software here that I do like is if you hold the menu button down for 3 seconds, you will go into this game center, and they do have this nice little online sort of setup here with the systems, which make it pretty easy to kind of understand for beginners. So that's something great if you're going to give somebody that is not real great with Android, maybe they're an iPhone user and they just want something that'll plug and play. It'll be nice here. We do have the nice little RGB lighting. So overall, this front-end software they have is pretty decent. It's not super fancy. It's very basic. You can't really do a lot with theming it or anything like that, but it works. They have things pretty well scraped, so no problems with that. And then the software itself has pretty good settings, so you can kind of customize the language of it. If it happens to ship to you in, Mandarin or simple Chinese, you can go in here and change the language. You can also adjust things like the joystick light and set up the network and check for data. Check for updates. So being Android, though, you can, of course, do things like install Emulation Station Desktop. This being Android 10, there's going to be some limitations. I would not expect this to update beyond Android 10. If someone like Gamma got a hold of it, although I don't see Gamma doing something with this handheld, it could maybe have improvements in the future, so keep that in mind. Overall, this Android implementation is somewhat basic, which is fine. It's not full of crap. It's not locked down. And it does have a pretty decent game center function by holding the menu button that gives you access to a simple front end. As far as performance goes, let's dive into that and talk about the performance of this. It is running the all-winner A133P, so there's really no mystery here about it except for the cooling solution, and it does seem to do a pretty good job with keeping this CPU, which can get very temperamental and warm at times, keeping it in check overall, as I didn't feel any enormous warmth like I did with the TrimUI brick. But let's hop in and kind of talk about the gameplay experience. All right, so what was the gameplay experience on here? So first of all, being that it's Android 10, which is incredibly ancient at this time in the world of software. I mean, we're looking at Android 16. It's going to have some limitations, but for what you're trying to do with this thing, play games up through PlayStation 1. And then as a bonus system, we all know the A133P can play a decent amount of N64, Dreamcast, and PSP games. However, those would be considered bonus systems as they are on all the other systems that run this CPU. So really, the experience is going to be pretty similar to what you should expect. I found that their game hub system was pretty good. It's not bad at all. I've seen a lot of these kind of be developed, and it's just straightforward and simple. It has a simple presentation with organization that is pretty good as far as the scraping and presentation goes. I had no issues with that. Now, one of the benefits of using this over something like Linux is you do have standalone emulators which can perform better. Nintendo 64 being one of those. The experience on this I found to be better than the N64 experience on something like the TrimUI Brick, which has the same CPU, but of course lacks sticks, and that affects it as well. Now, what I really wanted to do is compare this side by side with like the Cube XX, which I think is running about $70, $60 still, and probably the one that's going to be the most straight comparison to this. As you can see here, the games and screens look pretty good, and these two CPUs are similar enough, with the all-winner 133P probably being a stronger CPU overall between the two, but to give you a sort of sense of what it plays like. I did find myself enjoying this screen. I think I've always found a fondness for this 720p 1-inch screen, so no surprise there. But I did find the experience to be overall lacking when you consider something else that is in the same vein, a different shape and a smaller screen, but around the same price point for an Android system. And that is the the XU Retro 20 V32. I always forget that name. That also has Android on it, on a smaller screen, a smaller form factor, and lacking sticks. But between the two of these, the Android experience I found to be superior on the XU Retro. If I was going to have to choose between one of the two, the XU Retro has better hardware. It has a that beautiful sharp 3.2-inch screen, which is smaller, but I just found it to be a better experience overall for me. So if you're wondering between the two, which is better at this $70 or less price point, the XU Retro 20V32 is really going to be a better handheld. Overall, I found the experience here to be somewhat average, and if this thing can hit at 50 or below, it'll become a much more value proposition. At the pricing I'm seeing this at, I don't think it's quite there. I think spending $70 on something else is much better. I'd still take the Cube XX, which is better build quality and its software economics, even though it's Linux and doesn't have Android overall. Now, that being said, there are non-gaming issues where you might want to prefer this over Android. It's going to do things like show YouTube. You can use it as a media player. It's got pretty decent speakers for it. So I can see the use case there. But let's kind of sum up my overall view of this and give a recap of this handheld and wrap up this first impressions and review. Hey guys, it's me, Dead Fred. Sorry to interrupt, but I wanted to take a moment and just talk about this little tiny controller. So this little thing is so cool. It has the shape, which reminds me if like someone cut off the bottom of a Miu or maybe a Powkiddy V10. It's kind of just like the same bottom part there. So imagine if you just took that part of it and turned it into a tiny little pocketable Bluetooth controller, complete with shoulder buttons that last up to 8 hours on a single charge, has a lanyard, and you can take with you anywhere you go. This thing is so convenient, and you can pick one of these up on AliExpress. So I'll leave a link in the description. We want to thank our friends at AliExpress for providing this and sponsoring our channel, so make sure you check it out. Anyways, this thing is pretty awesome. Again, it is the IINE Bluetooth mini controller. back to the show. All right. So, what are my overall thoughts on the D40MAX? First of all, there's not really much Max about this. I don't know if the name matters. Do they have another D40? I don't remember. But I found this to be a handheld like mini that I review on this channel, where there are a few redeeming qualities of it, but overall, in this market and the competition, I don't know that this can reach the sort of price area to really make it an effective choice here. Overall, it's not a terrible handheld. The things that I liked about it, I like the ergonomics of it. It feels pretty good. Although I wouldn't say it feels better than the Cube XX. That is also a very good feeling handheld. The hardware on this is average with some things I didn't like the analog, I'm sorry, the shoulder buttons, which I didn't find to be great, the lack of analog on them. Also, the hardware quality of them is not very great. It's lacking the kind of sticks that everybody should be using nowadays. Still using those older switch sticks, which are tend to prone to drift. I did find the Android implementation of this to be good because it's not bloated, it's pretty simple, and I like the front end that they present on it. From a use case of if this is a gift or you're giving it to someone that's a first time starter, I actually think this could be pretty decent if you can get this at a appropriate price, because again, their overlay software is simple. I like it. It's better than I've seen some of the others done, and I would encourage them to continue to develop it. Only thing I would like to see in it is maybe some way to theme it. That would make it a little fun. It does have nice lighting on here. It has decent D-pad and buttons, which are not bad at all. And again, an ergonomic feel that's great. Um, I would say that for many people, you're probably spending $60 to $70. I don't think that this is going to be at the top of the list, but I also think that this is a halfway decent handheld. I was a little more excited for it when I saw it in pictures, but overall, my actual experience with it has been somewhere in the middle of the road. Maybe there's just too many of these out here. Maybe I've just played with too many of these, but I just can't find a lot of excitement in this handheld, other than that we have probably the second, and leave me a comment if I'm missing anything out, but second touchscreen, small form factor Android game console, along with the Magic X or XU Retro V20, X20, V32, whatever. Those two handhelds, and between the two, the XU Retro is just much better if you're going to spend the money. So that's my experience with the D40MAX. I'd say it's an average handheld. You know, on a 1 to 5 scale, it's a 3 out of 5. It's not terrible, not great. And if you get it or wind up with it, it's it's serviceable. It's not great as far as the shape and pocketability of it, but it is still pretty interesting overall. Anyways, guys, let me know what you think. Leave me a comment like always. I want to know what you think about this. Do you think this is another e-waste? Is it just, has Diium went in the wrong direction? Are they in the right direction for some of their older ones? What would you do with this handheld? Any sort of interest in it at all? Anyways, remember to hug your loved ones and love your hugged ones, because tomorrow is never promised. We'll see you next time, Deadheads. Dead Fred out.